Celebrity. Oh geez, how are you doing? Which one of you has attacked me last night in my sleep? I had a really, really weird dream. It was very, very real. It was very, very intense. And I was attacked by a snake. And it was a giant, purple, really thick, slug kind of looking snake. And it was like attached to my arm. To this arm. Yeah, I know you ain't got gains like these. Sorry, the mic's over here, isn't it? Yeah, the snake was like a purple slug kind of thing, and it was like sort of wrapping itself around my arm, and it was just like sort of choking my arm out and poisoning it. And I woke up, and it was like in the dream, it was so real, and it was like super painful, like really was killing. Like, yeah, it was intense. I thought, like, obviously during the dream I thought it was all real, like it was very intense, and then I woke up, I was like, thank God my arm's still attached to my body. That was really, really intense. So I thought I'd do a Vital and Phase Plant preset pack 48-hour flash sale with the discount code SNAKEBITE. So you can download any of the packs now, 50% off. Offer ends Thursday evening. Discount code SNAKEBITE, one word, all high caps, high case, capitals, all capital letters. That's the word. Anyway, I said I would design a Vital bass today, and something a bit more complex and rhythmically interesting. I would say I've made a bass that sounds like a 7.7 out of 10, because I've made better sounds before. But it does have a cool movement that I want to get into. And, well, let's just dive in, shall we? So anyway, yeah, won't lie, I'm a bit tired after that horrible dream. But yeah, let's have a listen to the loop that I've created anyway, to begin with. So I do think it's pretty cool. It's got a quite nice movement on, in my opinion. And let's dive into the patch then, shall we? So the idea for this one was, like I said, to create a retaliation to the snake bite. No, the idea was to create something rhythmically complex. And to do this, I've just done basically a LFO Sandwich times 3. Okay, if you don't know what an LFO sandwich is, you haven't been on the channel for long enough. You need to go back and watch all my other videos on repeat with all of your family members on separate IP addresses, if possible. Okay, so this is an LFO sandwich is where you take one LFO, LFO1 for example, you put it on all the parameters you want to move around, modulate, loads of filtering, loads of FM, some movements in the levels of the oscillators, in the pitching, all this stuff. It's the master LFO, the slave master LFO. No, this is the master, and the slaves are 2 and 3. People always say, when you say slave, it has like a negative connotation, doesn't it, the word slave? But obviously we think back to, the slave times and how horrible they were. But in this context, it's not like political, We're talking in terms of sound design, so don't lose your hat or anything. Do you have a hat? I don't know. Sorry, I'm really tired. Anyway, pull yourself together. All this crazy chaotic movement is coming from the modulation of the LFOs, LFO1 and its slaves. Okay, so LFO1, the main movement, we're doing it all off the grid, so it's nice and just random or just very organic. So when you do it off the grid, just select the seconds mode here, and then this first one, go 1.122 seconds, and I've done a triangle on all of them, but I've just made it more of a ski slope pattern, okay, or a half pipe, more half pipe style. So the first one, 1.122, and then I'm going to take LFO2 and drag that square over onto the slider of LFO1, the phase position. Okay, So LFO1's little slider here is being modulated by LFO2. And then that one's at 0.937 seconds. So they're all around 1 second or a bit lower or a bit higher. And so that one's got a nice half pipe as well. And then LFO3, again, we drag LFO3 onto the slider of LFO2. So it's done in order, you know, it's not too complex. LFO3 is at 1.607, and that is also a nice half pipe, modulating the slider start position of LFO2, and that whole LFO obviously is modulating the start position of the slider of LFO1. So there's 3 movements happening. Okay, this one, LFO3 is controlling LFO2, which is controlling LFO1. So any slight adjustment in the speed or shape of any of these 2 or 3 is going to create a massive difference to the rhythm, you know. Just for an example, I put a little macro here to shift the speed of LFO2 and make it a little bit slower, and that will change the groove dramatically. Even any slight change will have a massive effect in the chain, because it's like such a complicated setup of rhythms. Okay, but the idea is that allows you the chance to have like a much more interesting movement. Okay, that you can like stumble across randomly. So you see there's these little parts where it's like doing it super quick, and it's almost like a little flam effect. And then there's other parts where it's like kind of medium speed, and then there's parts where it's like a long, like kind of LFO thing. So it's sort of going back and forth, and yeah, you can't really understand what's happening, but it's setting ourselves up for hopefully striking a great groove for the drums, you know. So like, it doesn't have to be the one that you settle on forever, like that particular sound once you've made it. You can, like, I always analyze the smaller parts in the loop. So I might do one loop like that and think, oh, you know, like the third quarter of it was really cool, and I will use that bit. But I don't have to use it all. But we're just creating like a nice long audio file of interesting movements. That's essentially the idea. Okay. And yeah, we don't have to delve too much into the sound design, because I do want to keep this video short, because I just wanted to explain that technique one more time. I've mentioned it on previous videos a lot, but it really is, I think, the best way to get most complex rhythms out of your bass sounds in Vital. I love doing that. And so for the voicing, I've done a sine wave at -24, and then a sine wave at +14. And this one is modulating the level. So the level is off. It just comes up and down on the LFO, the master LFO, LFO1. And of course, that one is also going into the first oscillator with the FM here. And the FM amount is modulating. Okay, and the blend, the brown noise here is providing a bit of extra high end. Bit of a like gritty high end texture, and that's mixed on the level as well. And we've got the direction, which is my little white noise kind of effect. That's also mixing in on the level. Just so when we got that part of the LFO where it's higher up, it gets a bit brighter. That's the essentially the idea there. And yeah, a bit of stereo on this one, a bit of smear mode to give it a bit of a distortion. And that's pretty much this section done. I've done a little bit of movement on the LFO, on the main master LFO as well, on the little detuning, the sort of fine tuning on the oscillators to give the pitch a bit of a movement around here as well. Okay, and yeah, we've also got some movements happening on the third LFO. So although this is one of the slave LFOs, you know, I've actually used this LFO to modulate a few other things as well, so I can provide a little bit of extra more a separate groove and a separate random movement on like some of the extra sounds, you know. So for this one, I've basically got the LFO3 tracked to a bunch of different things, but one of the main things is the pitch of oscillator 1, going up a whole semitone. So this is the sort of main oscillator almost, because it's the one that's always on and it's the lowest subby one. But this one is modulating the pitch of it's going up a semitone and back down again, So there's quite a bit of tension being created during that, If you notice in the MIDI as well, I have drawn in a little semitone up note here as well. Just for that one little part, just so we got a bit more of an interesting, again, similar kind of effect. Going up one semitone in drum and bass always gives you that extra tension, So yeah, what have we got next then? Filter, nice low pass filter here. This one is... Oh my, what have I done? That is almost better than before, isn't it? Oh, we've got a whole different idea for a bass there. Might have to move on to that one for version 2. Anyway, let's carry on with the original sound then. The low pass filter here on oscillator 1 and 3. That's that's taking out quite a lot of harmonics. But yeah, all that moving on the master LFO here, and then we've got the other filter, which is doing oscillator 2, which didn't feature in the first filter, and then also everything from the first filter is coming in here as well. So nothing is left unfiltered, except for I think the white noise, the sample seems to be unfiltered, but that's just modulating on the level as well here, Anyway, effects wise, everything's being driven super hard by the hard clipping. About 22 dB, so really distorting it a lot, and it kind of slams it all together, as I like to say. The chorus, also we've got a bit of movement on the mix there, and on the delays, there's a nice amount of modulation on these guys, and the voices are frozen. So the chorus is not a random chorus movement, it's all controlled by the LFO1. And similarly, there's a little bit of a variation with our slow or the slower LFO3, which sort of adds a bit of extra detail, changes one of the chorus parameters as well. It changes a couple of parameters like the mix on the filters and little things like that, just so that the patch just evolves a little bit throughout the course of the loop, but it's quite subtle what I've done that on, just to give a bit of extra realism as the loop progresses. This phaser filter is just targeting a bit of low mids, and it's mixed in very low. It's not super, it's a subtle detail. Got a little bit of reverb for the high end, just to kind of give it a bit of a rim sound. Tiny bit of a brightness boost with the multi-band compressor, having the attack up quite high, the release low, and just mixing in a bit of the effect. Okay, just a little bit of sort of brightness boost. Similarly here with the EQ, a little bit of low end and high end boost. And that's pretty much the patch. All the main movement is really coming from LFO1, and the main movement is coming from particularly the going from 0 to 100 on the level of the oscillators of number 2 here, this high pitched one, of the digital kind of spectral one, and of the noise. Okay, so all those three things are really tracked to that LFO quite heavily to provide the main basis for the movement. The FM as well, that makes a big difference here, giving us that sort of growl aspect to the sound. That's massively modulated on the LFO1, not all the way up, but enough to make a big impact on the sound. And then obviously the low pass filter opening up, that's one of the big drivers of the dynamic part of this sound, as is the little extra filter here. And so those are the main things. Again, like I kind of mentioned in the previous phase plant video, similar synthesis techniques, focusing on prioritizing the levels of the oscillators and the pitching on the LFO, super important. And again, a bit of filter movement here, and again we can try and create a separate version of that at some point, because that has another whole new potential when I take that filter off. Effects wise as well, everything is driven really high into the distortion, and the kind of real texture and timbre of the sound comes from the fact that the first oscillator, the low subby sine wave, is really slamming on the level unchanged, really high level of sub bass, and it's all the other ones that go from 0 up to 100, that give that growl. But because that sub bass one is still on the whole time and it's all distorted together, you have this marriage where like the low subby bass part is always like on in the sound, and then all the growl and character comes on and off through these secondary elements, okay? But they kind of like work together to create something new. But there's always like a low bass in underneath it still. So it's just for that kind of bass, So it's got like the whole bass bottom part in it, and it's got the growly mid-range movement on top. So it's kind of like an all-in-one kind of thing, But that is something that I try to create often, because it's better to cover the whole spectrum with one sound if you can, in my opinion. It's just easier. So that's why I try to do that. That's my sort of final thoughts on the Vital sound design. But yeah, there's nicer patches that I've made when I've had more sleep, and you can download them all for 50% off now on the website if you want, with the code SNAKEBITE. But one word, SNAKEBITE, one word. That will end on Thursday evening though, so make sure you do it quick. Anyway, with the bit of processing then. The first thing I went ahead and did was to bounce out the sound at 2 different speeds. So the first one here, again, the shift at 0. There's our main rhythm, and then turning the shift up to 100. Which changes the speed of one of our slave LFOs here. And that one is then obviously going to have a completely different rhythm, and so I can use the best of both. So the first one is the main one that I like the most, our sort of original speed here. And then this top one is the slowed down, the shifted version. And so all I've done in this case, to make it really simple, is on the 4th bar, I've just taken that slower one and dropped it down into the faster one channel. And we're just using this one as the main channel. And so for the 4th bar, we just have this extra variation that comes from the slower one. So we've got a bit of extra rhythmical interest as that goes on. Okay, doesn't have to be like that. It's just an example of how you could create some different versions, bounce out a few different versions, and then chop and change the parts that you want to use for which kind of section, But the important thing on this one is that I've done just a bit of processing to tidy up the sound, essentially. So we've just got a little bit of a kick side chain, again, just a volume kind of drawn in thing here, about 80%. A little one for the snare, about 50% here, a nice little transient kind of side chain. And then after that, I've done a little bit of convolution reverb, the white blur, 50 milliseconds on the convolver, which is a really tight little convolution reverb, 15%. And then a little bit of mid-side EQing, taking out quite a lot of the low end, up to 120 hertz in the sides only. It's because we did create the bass in a stereo way, so there is quite a lot of mud in here. Okay, so just tidying that up a bit, and then we have the finished audio file like that. So yeah, that's our little sound design tutorial done for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Alright then, my G's, I hope that was a helpful tutorial today. And yeah, tomorrow we're going to crack on with some phase plant synth stabs. Going to make some extra funky little leads to hopefully fit with the rest of this track. And then we got to start tying things together here, because I've made loads of different sounds and I've got loads of different ideas, and I'm gonna at some point very soon try to sort of get the best of everything and put everything together. I think that's also important to do next. Leave a comment if you've tried this kind of rhythmical technique out in Vital, and what you think of it, and let us know what you think of the bass that I've created today as well. Even if I think it's not the absolute best, I think it does have a nice movement in. I think that we can get it to fit in the main track somehow, some way. We will manage it. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, my G's. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Peace out.